tonight's program, we chat with CaptPFDennis about his newest mission.
And keep in mind that in no way was I ever meant to be malicious or anything in my comments.
I don't. I take criticism well.
I brag about myself.
Not to brag too much, but I just won an award for a news photo that I took.
And the boys get off on a tangent that has nothing to do with the Foundry.
I think they're what they put the most of as special officers in the game. I think it's science and tactical are tied.
Sorry, won't happen again. Join us on the Foundry Roundtable.
Hello and welcome to Episode 7 of the Foundry Roundtable, the podcast exclusively covering the Foundry for Star Trek Online. I'm your tame Foundry author, Drogan1701. With me is a man recently put on trial for an assassination attempt on the Grumpy Cat, Hippiejohn.
I hate that cat.
And a man who is at the very center of the Vulcan savings and loan scandal, Greendragoon.
The Vulcan are just easy marks.
And our guest tonight, the force behind Primetime UGC, CaptPFDennis.
Hello.
And whom I've always thought should be promoted to Admiral PFDennis, but last time I mentioned it, he refused, so...
Who wants a desk job?
He's pulling a Riker on us.
That's right.
And we start tonight with some news, actually. We have a winner in the Foundry contest number 6.
Huzzah!
The Depths of Nukara Prime by P. Sutherland.
That was a good mission. I enjoyed it.
You liked it?
Yeah, I didn't. I enjoyed it. I liked it. I wouldn't say it's my favorite mission ever, but I did enjoy it. I unfortunately did not get to every mission, so I didn't vote. So sorry, everybody, I didn't vote. There are some out there that I still mean to play. So they're on my list of missions that I want to play.
CaptPFDennis or Greendragoon, did you guys get to play that one?
I did not. Sorry.
Oh, neither did I. I haven't been playing much. I have a couple on the list that I have to do, but I've been building mainly.
Well, I didn't get to them either. But as I said from the beginning, because I had an entry in it, but I did not expect to win, so I'm totally thrilled with the result. The other piece of news we have is one that we can't really talk about because, unfortunately, since we're recording on a Wednesday, we have no idea what the end of that countdown is going to bring, or if it's anything Foundry related or anything. But
so
by the
I don't
time
think it's Foundry related.
Yeah. You never know what kind of implications it might have.
So you want to cast your votes whether you think it's a Romulan faction and see if we're right or not?
So are we casting our votes for what we think is actually going to happen in May? Or now a prediction for what's actually going to happen in May, or a prediction for what they're about to announce?
Yeah, it's like a feel rather than actual content right now.
Yeah, it's not going to be any content right now, certainly. But it's going to be a big reveal.
I think we know it has something to do with the Romulans.
Yup.
I think beyond that, we know nothing. So it's all speculation. I mean, I think, and it's probably been covered ad nauseum on the boards.
Way out there speculation is, what if they've actually managed My speculation for what we're going to find out at the end of the countdown is, what if they have managed to keep it quiet, and at the end of the countdown it is tomorrow premieres episode 1 of a feature episode series that takes us into May. Maybe not once a week, but maybe between now and May. I don't know. It's a guess. I have no idea what they're going to announce tomorrow, so I'm just taking a shot in the dark.
That's about all we got.
Yeah, see, I agree.
I'd be cool with that.
I think it's going to be content. I think it's going to be something to ease the way till May.
I think it's going to be announcement of a big content push in May with a Romulan faction by the end of the year.
I kind of want to reserve judgment because I with these things I try not to have any expectations. That way I'm not disappointed.
Yeah, I don't have any expectations. Like I said, I'm taking a crazy guess. But
as I've always said, Cryptic, if you do a Romulan faction, we better be able to make Foundry missions for it from day one.
I agree.
See, when I was in...
said that every time, so...
Yeah. Paul?
Yes.
Yeah, when you were in...
Yeah, when I was in Vegas, and they had that kind of cryptic rally there for Star Trek Online, I talked to dstahl, and he said that Season 8 was going to primarily be a return to story content. So I think that that's their main game for this.
I don't disagree. I want to find out when the first time that one of them started talking about our dev team is getting bigger. Our dev team has, gotten a lot bigger or whatever. When the first time that was, 'cause it's been a while since they first said that. And Cryptic, after Stahl came back, they got a little more cautious and when they said things, and they might not have been saying our dev team is bigger until they actually had a bigger dev team. And if that was long enough ago, and they got people working on stuff long enough ago, we might be looking at a really big content drop in May. So
they keep saying it's so big that they're not calling it a season.
And what if that chunk of that is Klingon?
I'm holding out hope,
nice.
And he has also repeatedly talked about how he wants to fix factions this year. I'm holding out hope that May we're suddenly going to have a 3-faction game. That's what I'm holding out hope for, but I don't have an expectation that's going to happen.
Well, he also talked about the exploration sector for the Foundry pickups, and he definitely said he was, determined to get that in.
Yeah, but every time he talks about that, it's in the hypothetical scenario. I don't think that's something that's on the schedule. I think that's something he wants to do or something he's reading about doing.
Yeah, he does do a lot of talking about things he'd love to see.
Yeah.
Of course, they never commit to anything anyway because they don't want to be held to it in case they change their minds.
Which is smart, but the only problem is that people hold them to it anyway.
Yeah, well,
as if it's a promise.
Cryptic sneezes. They make a fuss about it on the forums.
Let's get right into what we've been working on. And Paul, I know you've got a new mission out, so why don't you start us off? What have you been working on?
All right. Well, I just released a mission called Remains of the Daimon, and it's a pretty serious mission. I mean, I tried to infuse some humor into it, but this time I didn't really do too much. But it's all about a Ferengi captain having to take command of your ship, or the player's ship.
I think that was me.
It kind of frees you up a little bit to be able to do certain things. If you let, you let your player captain be off the bridge during, any sector space, or any system, any space play. But anyway, it's a basic adventure mission, solo RP. It's all about tracking down the bad guy who stole treasure from the Tower of Commerce. But I don't want to go into it too much because, I know you're reviewing it, and I don't want to spoil anything either.
Coincidentally reviewing it.
Yes, but I am working on another. I haven't named it yet, but I'm well into it. But I have prime time to do too, so this is going to go slow.
Which, of course, prime time is you do a lot with the Foundry for making sets and stuff.
Oh, absolutely. I make the sets in the Foundry, then I demo record them. I have to demo record the animations each time, or I'll duplicate the maps, putting different animations on the characters each time you do a map transition. That way I can demo the whole thing in one shot. Then I have to come back out and fraps the demo and then edit it in Adobe Premiere. So it's a process.
It always amazes me how much work shows in that.
Yeah, it's a great show.
Well, thank you. Sometimes it's a little simplistic because, believe me, if I did everything I envisioned or I'd want to do, you probably wouldn't see an episode, every 2 months or something.
You got to stick to your.
I try every 2 weeks, but it doesn't always work out.
Greendragoon, what have you been working on?
I haven't been too heavy in the Foundry, but I have been doing a couple of things. First off, I started playing around with that new transporter room, and specifically I was trying to get it so that you start out in the transporter room, you get on the transporter pad, and then you hypothetically beam to the location. And then, of course, you use triggers to get rid of the transporter room. And I got it mostly working and even got a reasonable beam effect going. Unfortunately, I discovered that the transporter room seems to have some draw regions associated with it. So when you're inside the space of the transporter room, certain things outside will not draw, or they'll be reduced in order to save, basically save power on your video card. And normally in a Cryptic-made mission, this is used so that they can build bigger, more elaborate sets without bringing down the low-end graphics card. Unfortunately, it's working against me here, and this draw region still is active even when the transport room is not. So I haven't quite worked out how to get past that, but I think it may involve like building a false room around the transporter or something like that. The other thing I've been working on is I started playing around trying to choose a background for one of my interior maps, and I decided to start sitting down and go through and systematically make notes about what each background looks like, what kind of lighting it has, what kind of fog it has, does it have a star background, is it black, is it some other color, and start actually documenting that. I'm not very far into it. I'm only partway through the A's at the moment because it's a huge list. But
this is interior backdrops?
Yeah. But I mean, it's one of those things that this list is huge. It gives almost no indication of what it actually produces or what result. And so many times I go in there and I'm guessing until I find something that kind of looks right. But being such a long list, it would be awesome to be able to have some idea in advance what these different backdrops do.
Right, you could almost plan out how different things blend together. And
even just starting out with the beginning of the list, I've discovered some very interesting lighting schemes. For instance, I think it's Siri Prime or something like that, that actually, at least in an interior, produces a reasonably close to an outdoor lighting scheme.
Well, I do hope you post these on the forum when you're done.
That's my intent to, but it's a slow process. I've got a test map I built so I could kind of judge the changes in lighting patterns.
That's something that's going to be definitely useful for just about everybody.
Yeah, well, that's what I figured.
Because a lot of us have started building on that interior. I think it's not something that I used to do until I learned it from Mac, who had done his awesome, what was it, shuttle bay that had Earth outside the window.
And one of the nice things is, I mean, before it was that you could not spawn outside of an established interior, but now that's no longer enforced. And so quite a few of the maps are expanded for some reason and actually have huge amounts of black space.
Yeah, I noticed a lot of the newer ones are like that.
Yeah, it used to be, because I built a map where it extended beyond the old playable area, and you could not place an NPC out there, or a spawn point. So I had to build a little hallway onto it in the spawnable area and put a character in there that I had intended to put in the room. I don't know if that's different on that map now. That was the Starbase 39 interior. I don't know if they've altered that. But that's definitely going to be a benefit if you get that list done.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, like I said, I don't expect it quickly, but it may be something I just take a little bit of a time and try and eventually work my way through it.
Awesome. Well, Hippie, what have you been working on?
Bajor. Got into the Foundry a bunch this week. I've been waking up really early, even earlier than I normally do, which is odd, and spending that first about hour of my day drinking my Earl Grey and working on the Foundry. And I've been doing a lot on Bajor. I got a lot done. If anybody has Bajorans, I've already got a couple people that, have said they'll send me some Bajorans. So, out there, anybody who hears this, if you have Bajoran NPCs or Bajoran characters and you are willing to save that image file, that headshot, and send it or put it in a way that I can get my grubby little paws on it so I can have a map populated by Bajorans, please. That'd be great. But that's what I've been working on. Every time I've opened up the Foundry, it's been that and a new Klingon mission. I just kind of started the project. I opened it up and started looking around the Klingon Foundry and remembering that I'm kind of disappointed in how few Klingon assets there are, as compared to, say, a Federation sort of mission. So. But that's okay. I have a really, really fun Klingon mission I would like to do. So,
well, it's all about how to make it work with what we've got.
Well, in this case, it's another case of there are people out there who make awesome representations of NPCs. I mean, I can do okay. I need Admiral Devok and Commander Roxy from Omega Force for a mission that is a KDF mission. that does not involve the Borg. I hope that that's interesting enough to someone that they'll send me a good Devok and a good Roxy. Actually, somebody did send me a really good Roxy. So I know the guy who won the Foundry Challenge, Sutherland, P. Sutherland. He did some really interesting things with the costuming on his characters. And if you listen to our show and you figured out a way to put like that, that Omega Force armor on people and such, please get in touch. Let me know. That's what I've been working on. Is mostly Bajor and a little bit of a KDF. So
fantastic. Well, I've been continuing to work on remastering my Descent series. One of the things I've started doing is building with our new assets, building a TOS style space station for one of the missions.
Cool.
And one of the things that I did recently was I started a thread. You know how we were all complaining that we didn't get any walls or floors or anything with these assets. It was just the assets themselves. So I started a thread in the forums challenging people to, kind of figure out what can we use for walls? What's going to look good with these assets and make it a TOS feel? And I got to give a big shout out to Lincoln in Space and Skydawn Knight. They really came through. They figured out that there's two different ones that they figured out. One of them was the holodeck arch. You can use the side of it as a wall. The problem with that is it's pretty low. It's not a tall asset. And the other one was the generic counter 01. You use the back of it, and it's sort of two panels of gray, which is tall enough, and it's pretty thin, unlike the other one, which is kind of extends far. So I've been starting to use those and sort of laying out a floor plan, figuring out what I'm going to need for the mission. I'm probably going to need like a control center and some cargo bays, things like that. It'd be nice to have actual walls, of course, but as I said, we've got to make do with what we got. And I've also, at the same time, for another mission, just sort of started. I want to make another TOS space station, but I want this one to be crashed on the ground and partially flooded. So I've pulled up the exterior meadow clearing map, which has some water on it, and I've sunk some platforms down into the water, which took quite a few test plays to figure out exactly how far below absolute zero to put those. I think it was like -4 or something like that. So that'd be a good sort of, like waist high water. And I'm going to have a couple of different decks, some of which, you'll start on ones that are fine, and then you'll go down into the flooded sections.
There was this
I think it's going to turn
one
out
map
pretty cool.
in, I think it was Champions Online, where it looked like they took the entire map, skewed it slightly, so it was tilted, and as you proceed through it down, you start moving into more and more flooded, and eventually you're like swimming through flooded sections.
Huh.
That would be sweet. What I wish you could do is what they did in, I can't remember the movie. It was some movie where it required a sort of progressive level of flooding. And what they did is they built the set over a water tank and slowly lowered the set into the water tank.
Oh, they did that
So
in
it looked like
SG-1.
the holes coming out.
Poseidon
Is that what it
Adventure, maybe.
It might have been SG-1.
Because they had that one ship that they had underwater. It was supposed to be flooding,
Yeah.
and they just lowered the set into the tank.
That might be what I'm thinking of. But obviously I can't do that, so I have to have it sort of permanently in there.
I don't know. Alimac managed to do something pretty close.
Yeah, well, he's better at this than I am.
Yeah, he needs a lot of patience.
I freely admit that.
Well, I did in a cave once. I mean, a cave with waist-high water. You fell into it from the top, but, it was all level. I mean,
Now,
you didn't get
did you do that in a similar way to what I've been doing?
Yeah, exactly. I just put the walls up in the water,
Yeah.
I mean, just for whatever height I needed. Of course, you have to keep going in, preview and preview and preview until you get it right.
I kind of do that anyway, so.
Right. That's how I think
Western builders do it.
we're our own worst enemies. All the things that we come up with because of the lack of assets that we have kind of hurts us in a way, I think. Because they're not in a hurry to give us the things we need because I think they get a kick out of seeing what we can do.
That's a funny thing.
I really do.
Always kind of thought about the idea that if we still ever actually got the interior editor from Neverwinter, I I couldn't help but feel a little bit of sense of loss because it would just mean people wouldn't be as creative.
So let's move on to mission reviews. How about Greendragoon? What have you been playing?
Well, I actually played 2 missions. First one I actually played is one of yours, Drogan. I played Sink the Bismarck,
Awesome.
which I enjoyed.
What do you think of it?
It was good, although while it was proceeding out, I kept wanting to yell at the characters, did you guys even watch the show? Because it's one of those, the way it plays out, it's like clearly going to follow the same path as the M5. And you're like, guys, this is not a good idea.
And it was built for, I remember, was it a primetime contest that Kirkvat did with the Rogue AI concept?
Yeah, it may have been. Yes, because I think you won the prize, right? I
don't think there was exactly a lot of other entries.
No, there was
no,
I remember now. There was another guy who emailed me, and then he pulled his project when I went to play it. So I mean, yeah.
I won by default.
Yeah, changed his mind.
I will say that you playing it inspired me to try and come up with a Foundry trick to. I basically recreated your scene where the Bismarck destroys the freighter, and tried to get it so that I could get the Bismarck to actually destroy the freighter and do it on cue, so that by the time you completed sending the shutdown signal, the freighter had been destroyed, and it was too late.
And I think I know how you did it, and I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to see if I'm correct.
Okay.
So, if I understand how you did it, you took maybe like a fighter mob and reskinned it as the freighter, so it was very fragile, and made it probably an enemy and timid creature, and then put an invisible wall between it and the Bismarck, which is like a friendly battleship mob, and then on cue drop the wall, right?
Yeah. There's one other trick to it though to get it to actually work.
Yeah.
And that was so basically the fight starts when you're on the last dialogue screen. So there's a little bit of a delay, and I had to add that in order to get the timing right. For when the player clicks the close on that screen, so by that point the Bismarck is already opening fire. At that point, supposedly the player is trying to feverishly hit the shutdown sequence, which I set to be a long animation, and when that completes, it simultaneously triggers an explosion where the freighter is, and despawns the freighter. So the Bismarck can't either destroys it and everything's fine, or it doesn't destroy it and it still ends up.
But it still ends up.
It still despawns.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you that when I was building that mission was when Timid Creature was on Tribble, and I had kind of always intended to go back and put something like that in there because that's what I had envisioned, but I did not. I have not done that.
I'm one of those people that I will be playing through a mission and it's like, oh, wouldn't it be really cool if it did this? It's like, why can't I actually do that? And so then it gets me off going, and I have to go off and test it and see whether or not this could actually be done.
Yeah, because you had posted that in chat and asked me to take a look at it, and I was playing your little demonstration of it. I was like, wow, that is exactly what I had thought of doing, but had never actually gone back to do.
The one fault of it is if the player actually doesn't rush to send the signal, in which case the Bismarck will still destroy the freighter, but if you then send the shutdown signal, the explosion will appear a second time, because the first explosion would have been when the freighter was actually destroyed. That said, I mean, for all intents and purposes, it's not a horrible downside.
No, and it definitely works. So was it a fighter mob that you used for the freighter?
It was a fighter mob. I tried with a weak mob, and it took a little longer to destroy, and my biggest concern was that if I made the freighter any stronger, even though I knew it was going to despawn, and the player waited, there was a high likelihood the freighter would move away from its starting spot, in which case when the
you'd get two
explosion triggered, it would be out of place.
Explosion would be off somewhere, yeah.
Yeah.
Fair enough, yeah. So
the other mission I played is Paul's Remains of Daimon. And I really, really actually did enjoy this mission. I know we kind of chatted a little bit.
Yeah.
And keep in mind that in no way was I ever meant to be malicious or anything.
No,
in my comments. Okay.
I don't. I take criticism well.
Well, that's good. I will say, I mean, he talked a little bit about it before. Basically, you're called by Starfleet to surrender command of your ship to this Ferengi captain so that they can use the ship to basically go chase down these guys who have stolen from the Tower of Commerce. My one issue with this is I just couldn't see Starfleet relinquishing like full command of a starship to anyone outside of Starfleet, really. I could see it being where they were the Ferengi was put in charge of the mission. But that aside, your Ferengi was excellent. He was such an interesting character to just watch and see how he kind of unfold. Because I mean, he's very Ferengi, but at the same time, he's very progressive for a Ferengi. I mean,
Right.
he seems very open to the idea of the Ferengi eventually joining the Federation. He definitely likes to challenge your conceptions about what you expect this Ferengi to be like. Because basically, I mean, you kind of half expect him to double cross you.
Right.
Your ship or something.
Well, you know that 30 years have passed since
Yeah.
Tom became Nagus, so you know there had to be some changes there.
Yeah.
I
But
mean,
yeah, like I said, I mean, I like that fact that, I mean, and you kind of poke at it several times in the mission where kind of challenging everyone's conceptions about what it means to be Ferengi and that we shouldn't always expect Ferengi to behave in this one stereotypical way, even though TNG and DS9 really conditions us to believe that.
well, I mean, there's one thing with all the different species, and that's in order to have had a society that has lasted, a spacefaring society that has lasted so many thousands of years, there has to be some competence someplace.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to have everything you'd have in every other, I mean, writers and engineers, and, you know, there are people of every type. And to say that a Ferengi, you know, they're just greedy and they're all, you know, corporate-minded, well, that can't be true. Because a society couldn't function that way if they were the only type of people they were.
Yeah.
And the same thing is Klingons. Sure, there are Klingon lawyers, there are Klingon philosophers, there are Klingon doctors, and you know, there just has to be. It doesn't make any sense otherwise.
That's something they sort of commented on Enterprise when they had that Klingon lawyer sort of lamenting that, you know, all the young people, they just want to be warriors, you know, but there's all these other castes of Klingon society. There has to be, you know. There has to be laborers and, you know,
there would be
inventors
in every society.
Well, they also had that doctor or that scientist, Klingon scientist on Enterprise.
Yes. Yeah.
That's right.
John Shuck was the augment virus.
Yeah. And there was that one on TNG, the one where they were with a Ferengi scientist even. On TNG, the one where Beverly's trying to solve the murder of the Ferengi scientist.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, moving on, I loved your maps. I thought you did a very good job on maps. Your space maps were very nice. I loved how you managed to redress the wormhole map. I was very impressed by that because I'd never seen anyone. I mean, you basically managed to change the color as well as throw in some other weather effects to kind of hunt it to basically make it not look like this wormhole map that we've seen a million times.
Right.
I will say the nebula, which the rogue planet is in,
Yes.
managed to slow down my video card considerably.
Really, what's blinding. It's blinding.
Yeah, well, I'm a little concerned that on a low-end video card, like an Intel card, it would pretty much grind it to a halt.
Yeah, that's true. I don't always consider that. Yeah, I should look at that.
I liked the Rogue Planet. I especially like your choice of maps. I would love to see it built up a little bit more so it's a little more back alley-ish. So maybe like put in close-knit buildings that you have to work your way through.
That's a tough map for that. I'd have to use a different map for that.
Final banquet hall that you created was excellent, and I think I commented to do this before. I was really impressed. I mean, that just fit beautifully. I loved your fireplace. I'd never seen it. Let's see what else I got here. Okay, another thing. You start this off on Bajor, and you have this kind of side plot or interweaving plot with this Bajoran monk that keeps showing up, foretelling the will of the prophets. And I have to say I'm not entirely sure what purpose it serves. I mean, I can kind of see what you were going for, but as none of the rest of the plot relates to the prophets in any way, I was a little confused as to why he was there.
Well, no, I didn't want to make the story about that, but it was almost being tipped off. You almost got a few clues from the monk as to who the villain was. That's all it really was. And I also wanted to establish that I wanted to bring back the circle, because I think I might use them later.
Okay. So it was kind of a bit of foreshadowing to other stories?
Yeah, it wasn't all that, but I also wanted to start at Bejor. And I just had this in my head that I had to use that orb as a doorway. I just...
There was a little bit of what I thought was, and this is my personal opinion here, there was a little bit of, I would call a hiccup in the plot, and basically the early plot, which is the search for this stolen goods, and the later plot where you have the villain and the ultimate target, didn't have too much to do with each other. You start out with trying to track down the stolen good, and by the first half of the mission, you've actually recovered it. And it doesn't play much of a role beyond that, I mean, except for a little bit at the end. So my personal opinion is it would have been nice to either interweave the villains who show up later, a little earlier in the plot, like hint at them more.
Right.
I would liked the Romulan sub-commander. I liked his character. I would like to have seen him integrated a little more, because he kind of pops in at times, right. But he doesn't really get integrated until the very end. I mean, everything that happens to him is kind of outside of everything else that's happening. I think that's about it. I thought the fact that you worked in President Okeg was awesome. I was like so surprised when I saw him. I was like, how come nobody thought of this before? I mean,
that's something I haven't seen a lot, is people using the president.
I know that he's in
Cryptic uses them.
He's in somebody else's mission. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I know that when we interviewed H2O Rat Captain Gecko on Primetime, he had mentioned one mission that he played.
Is that something that
somebody had done it?
Is doing a mission centered around him.
I will throw out one idea here, is you could have totally gotten away with putting Rom in this mission. I mean, considering how much makeup he even wore in the show and the fact that he's aged on top of that, you could have totally gotten away with it.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, but I didn't want to do too, like you said about the Romulan. If I had, I was also time conscious. Yeah. So I knew I would have used the Romulan more. But I would have had to make two missions. I was kind of debating it as I was coming to a close, saying, this could be two.
It does sound like it could be two.
I think it could. I think it would be very tricky to separate them, because there is some interweaving that goes on between. But I could see this as a first part, you recovering the stolen goods, and the second part of you unmasking the true plot behind it.
I don't want to kind of give it away, but the reason for the subplot and the fact that the villain at the end didn't know what he had was almost to say, you're so brilliant, but you're really not.
Yeah, it's like
for all the,
it's like all the big deal stuff at the beginning is absolutely meaningless at the end.
Well, it's a big deal in another area. I mean, I can go on now from there and make another mission completely about that. So
something I did want to bring up, and you and I kind of discussed this a little before, and since we discussed this, I've backed up a little bit, is you have your two villains are actually existing characters from Deep Space Nine. And I went back and compared, and you did get, there was a fair amount of differences between how they appeared in the show and how they appear in your mission. I'd say that about the differences about the same as the differences of the way Castillo appeared in Cryptic's mission. So I'll generally use that as the excuse for a pass.
Well, I mean, the thing is, too, as long as they don't look like the actors, you can use anyone.
Yeah. I mean, if you wanted to play it, like, really safe, you can make them look a little older, like, a little whiter, just to separate them a little bit more. But I will say that your writing of the dialogue for them was utterly spot on, and I think that's part of the reason I recognize them so quickly, is because especially the male one, which I'm trying not to give away the plot.
Oh, okay. I got you.
No spoilers,
The male one is like, it's like, oh, that's totally him. That is like, it's exactly what he would say.
You gotta hear it. You know?
And
Well,
that's tough to do. It's tough to write for somebody else's character.
Well, I'll be honest. When I started playing STO, the only thing I ever did before was just watch Star Trek. I'm not a gamer. I don't play a lot of games. I play STO. That's it. I don't play on the consoles. Nothing. You know, my son has every one of them, but I don't really play. I played Zelda years ago, but I did it because I'm a huge Star Trek fan.
That's a good choice.
So, you know, I've gotten into all this just by playing this one game.
So the last thing I'm going to point, I promise to do this last one, is the use of Captain's dialogue, which personally I am not a fan of. And most of it, I mean, I could kind of forgive, but the one thing that really bugged me was at the very end, you basically used the Captain himself as kind of the platform to launch the final speech about how I'm supposed to interpret this, and it really went against how anything my character would actually say.
I gotcha. Yeah, that's a tricky thing. It's a tricky thing. There's no doubt about it. But
I've had that discussion with you in the chat room, actually, Paul, haven't I?
Yes.
I think it's a decision. Like that, it becomes a decision because for some players, they're going to have the experience that you have, Dragoon, which is that's not how my character would say things or how my character would act. And in the missions that I've played of Paul's, a couple of them where that dialogue sort of thing has come up, it's like, wow, that's exactly what my captain would say in this situation. And so my experience of it was like, wow, that was great. But I do see that it's a decision because some people are going to love it and some people are going to be like,
they're going to hate it.
It's not my character.
And I've thought about in the past several different ways of doing that, of delivering, that inspirational speech. Because, that's part of Star Trek, that's part of a lot of movies.
Yeah.
Is, the president's speech at the end of Independence Day, that rallies the troops,
right.
You want to be that hero, you want to give that great speech.
Exactly.
But how do you do it in the Foundry?
What was it? I saw someone, for life of me, I can't remember which mission it was, that someone actually ended up turning it into a bunch of branching dialogue options where you basically select how you want to proceed and the speech or log or whatever alters, and you basically let the player construct how they
I had an idea for a dialogue like that, and I think it was after I said, I think I saw the same one that you saw. I don't remember the mission, though. For the life of me, I don't remember the mission.
I had the idea of maybe having the obviously you can't, at the moment, select anybody's first officer exactly.
Right.
But, I kind of had the idea of having them do it. Of, you select a couple of prompts and your first officer does the speech. Based on what you select, the tone of what you select.
I tend to, and I realize I'm running my own risk with this, I tend to assign certain slight behavioral leanings based on tactical science and engineering.
Yeah, I do.
So tactical will be the more offensively oriented discussion or harder.
Yeah.
Engineering will focus more on the technobabble, and science will usually lean towards the softer, emotional, ethical side.
Oh.
The Daniel Jackson approach.
My science officer always sounds like a Vulcan. He just always does, and it's not because he is. It's always, emotionless.
Because how many players out there are going to have a Vulcan science officer?
Most.
Probably
because that's what you get. That's what you get when you start the game.
Well, I mean, I had one for a while, and then I said, wait, there are much cooler science officers.
Oh, sure.
There's I think science officers are what I think they're what they put the most of as special officers in the game. I think it's science and tactical are tied.
Although my engineer is an android.
Yeah.
That's because it was the only option we could choose for so long.
Well, the Borg's an engineer too.
So.
Yeah, that's true.
I think mine are still.
Yep, the C store, or if you had the special edition from Amazon, Liberated Borg, or the Z store, not C store. That's an engineer as well.
Of course, I also got the Liberated Borg from the STS recently, which is science.
Yeah. That is
That's a really, really great good ground officer, by the way.
Yeah,
Get them on
I'm so excited to get
ground.
them.
I think so, wouldn't you?
Yeah, matter of fact, my science officer's a hologram.
I have one of those too.
Did you actually go through and refer a bunch of people to get it?
You know what? I don't remember how. I think I won it somehow.
Because I thought that was a referral bonus, and has since never been put into the C-store.
Yeah. Matter of fact, I might have another one in a crate somewhere in my bank.
Yeah, if you want to send it my way.
I don't know how I got
I don't remember how I got mine.
Yeah, I don't either.
Yeah, I don't remember how I got mine, but I never use it. I actually never use it. So.
I use all of mine, all the specials. I have a Riemann and a Breen and
yeah.
Yep, I got those.
Got them all.
I have an Enar tactical officer.
I never bought one of those.
Yeah, my tactical officer has goes on an away mission. He has all like a Breen and a Riemann and a...
Yeah.
Everybody but Starfleet officers.
Yeah, it's like no more Starfleet.
I'm probably flying a Breen ship. And...
I recently tried to fly the Breen ship, and I love the stats. I could not stand that it was not a Federation ship, and I went back to
guess. See, I have the same response with my away team. I can't stand that it's not a bunch of Federation officers. I want to see the uniform I made in all the different colors of the department running around with me when I have an away team with me.
That's one of the reasons I use my Enar is because she's the cool alien race, but still has a Starfleet uniform.
Yeah. So I don't use the Breen or any of them that don't, like, the hologram doesn't let you change the costume on them either, and like what is it, Breen or the Riemann or the Jem'Hadar, none of them let you change their costume.
No, you should. You should be able to put them in uniform.
So I'll slot them into a ship spot, but I won't. I won't.
Yeah,
take
you
them
don't want to look
at
at
with me.
Yeah, we might have gotten off on a non-Foundry tangent here.
Well, hey, that happens.
So moving back, Hippie, what have you played?
I played. I'm starting to think that I'm a KDF player. I really am. Once again this week, I played a mission that's a KDF mission, and it's RogueEnterprise is a new mission. Now the guy who has 50,000 plays on his Federation Spotlight mission, but this one still only has 15. And I was the fourth person who played it. It's called Hero of the Empire, and man, aside from a couple of little typo things, like at the near the very end, there's a spot where he wanted to use like the green mission info dialogue or something, and the one of the brackets came off, like was left off in the editing, so you see, weird, like a weird piece of text. But aside from a stupid little typo like that's easy to fix, it was really well. I'm going to start with it was really well edited, which is really important because it was kind of the story was kind of metatextual in an interesting way. It doesn't spoil anything to say, hey, you pick up a mission and you go and do a mission, and it's nothing spectacular. It doesn't take a whole lot of time to complete, but the story of what you've done is what the Foundry mission is about. It's the story of what happened during your mission that becomes the tale that you play out. And it's really, really, really fun. It takes a lot of liberties with some STO canon, but it's easy enough to do that. And, without missing a beat, I'll say once I understood where the story was going, I went in the other room and I got myself a beer, and then I finished that beer while I kept playing the story, and I had another one because it's just that kind of a story. When I finished it, my review that I left him said something like, I raise a glass of blood wine, for the honor of a story well told. It it's a storyteller's story. And that doesn't mean that it's not fun to play for someone who doesn't understand how stories are told, but it's people who understand what I mean when I say that it's pretty metatextual. It both tells an excellent story. The mission itself is an excellent mission that tells an excellent story that within it tells another story that, at least to me, from my experience, had me thinking about the way that stories are told and left me with kind of a lesson. As a storyteller, I walked away from the mission with a lesson of why stories are important and how and why legends exist. So that's what I would say about the story. Now, in terms of the technical aspects of the thing, there would be great use of what the Foundry can do. Triggers that there are places that you come to in the story that it's like, are you going to do this thing or are you going to do that thing that's completely different? You make the decision, and then the map in front of you that you're running into has spawned into the decision that you've made. And a lot of great use of triggers and, the states of objects and when they become visible, things like that. It's obvious to me that Rogue really knows how to use the Foundry tool. I would also say that in terms of the technical aspect, map making, brilliant. The space maps were fun. The ground maps were entertaining. I'm not exactly going to call them fun. They were entertaining. Nothing about them was frustrating. So, I mean, you certainly could call them fun. They were more entertaining to me. I don't know how to describe the difference, but to me, that's what I'm going to say. So in terms of all of the aspects that are important to me about the mission, which is, storytelling, NPCs and how they're used, and then the technical aspect, which includes all of the things that the Foundry can do from triggers and states and explosions and backdrops and map making to NPC creation and all of it. And it was a stellar mission that currently at 15 plays, it is sitting at the top of the KDF mission list. It's for any level, and that's my favorite part of it. It is an epic feeling mission that is available as soon as the Foundry becomes available to you as a player. So, again, I think I'm becoming a KDF player because most of the time that I spend actually playing the game, when I'm not Foundrying, I'm playing one of my 3 KDF tunes at the moment. So I think I'm becoming just a pure KDF player, but none of them are Klingons. I don't know why that is. I just haven't made a Klingon. That's what I've been playing this
impressive
week.
review. I'm going to give this a try.
Glowing recommendation. Well, CaptPFDennis, have you been playing any missions lately?
I actually have not had a chance. I haven't really played many missions in probably the last couple of months. Prime time keeps me pretty busy. The only time I get to do them is when I review them for the show. And the last one we had, we didn't do any reviews. Only because we had a very long
big dev interview. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, you had 0, right?
Yeah. But I will be playing Rogue's mission for prime time this time. And also one of Sky.
Is he your guest?
No. Actually, I sent an email to Dark Frontiers, who's doing his Persistent Foundry project.
Awesome.
And I'm going to be interviewing him. I just have to settle on a date for that interview, but he'll be the guest.
Sounds excellent. I'll tell you the mission that I have played is called Legend of the Inspector General by Malize.
I saw that.
Or Malize, or who
Probably
knows how you pronounce that. It was an interesting little mission. There was a lot of interesting custom builds in it, I gotta say. Because he did a lot of stuff with pre-warp cultures, sort of in the medieval kind of level of development, which as you guys probably know, there's not a lot of assets for that. So the things that it used were, the big brick textured foundation objects.
Vulcan
and some of the
buildings.
Vulcan buildings. But he really built a very nice castle, which is something that I've not seen a lot of people build. Or even attempt to build as castles. He told me that, because he was in the chat room, he told me that he sort of modeled part of the mission on the Battle of Helm's Deep from Lord of the Rings. Being a big Lord of the Rings fan, that got me interested, and that got me to play it. Which, I can see the similarities there of, sort of defending a castle against an overwhelming enemy that's just coming at you and coming at you. That was part of my issue with the mission, is during that sequence, it was very, very difficult. Which he told me up front, that it was very difficult, because it's wave after wave of captain-level enemies. Now, he does have enough story here to make it, it's not a grind mission, it's not a farm mission, it's not any of that. It is a story mission, but it's a very difficult one. And I respond many, many times. And I don't necessarily mind that as long as I know up front that that's what I'm going to be doing, that that's what it's going to take. So, if that's your thing, this is the mission for you. If you're very keen on, being challenged and proving your ability, this is a good mission for you. The story was interesting. I think it took some cues from some of the original series episodes, where it's about you investigate a system where a Klingon ship has gone missing. You find hundreds of years ago, and you find the descendants of that ship on this planet. They have sort of constructed, you'd almost call it a religion, around the original general orders that the Klingon military operates under. They've been sort of, following these as if they were the word of God for generations. And it's kind of funny. And then you encounter primitive cultures, one that's working against these Klingons that have been on this planet, and one that's working for them. And it's all about the conflicts between the two. It reminded me of the TOS episode, and I can't remember the name of it, where a ship had gone missing many years ago, had crash landed on this planet, and the people of that planet had been heavily influenced by this ship.
That was a piece of the action?
Piece of the action. That's it. Turned out into gangsters.
Chicago mobs of the 20s.
Favorite episodes ever.
Yeah. So it reminded me a lot of that. Obviously not 20s mobs, but more like medieval Earth. And I don't know. I would recommend it, but be aware that it is a challenge. So, but
I like a challenge.
Yeah, a challenge is good. It's KDF mission for any level, I believe. There were one or two complaints I had about it. One was you go back up into space, and for some reason you fight a Romulan ship, which randomly shows up. Mm-hmm. And there were no other Romulans in the mission other than that. The enemy that you had been fighting was not the Romulans. I won't spoil it, but they weren't the Romulans, and it was just completely random. It took me out of the mission. I was like, wait a minute, why are they here?
Huh.
So, and
maybe it was something that was supposed to be reskinned?
It's possible. No, he did. I think it was intentional. I just don't know why.
Okay.
And that's sort of an advice I have for a lot of authors is to, try and focus. I think a lot of authors have a tendency to try and throw in everything in the kitchen sink into their missions because they like everything. The guy was doing a mission with this one, but he also liked Romulans, wanted to put him in. And, it didn't really work this time. So, but there we go. Moving on to our discussion topics for the evening. Anyone like to go first?
Did we have any suggested to us this week?
We did. Let me pull up the thread here. We had some suggestions from like Kirk Fat and I think Lincoln in Space.
Things that we could talk about.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Here's a good one for the assembled group because we all have differing levels of missions that we put out. What is your favorite mission, or what mission are you the most proud of and why? Now, obviously, for Greendragoon, because he only has one, right?
Same here.
The two of you guys, you only have one. Are you particularly
I only have one
proud
published.
of that mission?
I am. I mean, it's been very well received for my first mission. It was pretty much an 8-month labor of love, and I was not going to let it out until I was sure it was the best I could do.
Well, that's a good place to be at. Hippie, you have the kind of the same feeling?
No. Not at all. I only have one published right now, and that's the Spotlight mission. That's the Foundry Challenge number 5. And here's something I'll always tell people about myself is that I am a very technologically challenged hippie. I barely understand how this whole Skype thing works. You'll note occasionally I drop out of the calls because I'm like, what the hell just happened? The Foundry's not easy for me. It doesn't jump to figuring out exactly what to do doesn't jump to my mind. I'm constantly asking whoever happens to be in the chat room at Starbase UGC, how do I do this? And somebody can tell me something this week, and I'll have forgotten it in 2 weeks, even though I did it in a map, 2 weeks ago. So the mission is not very technologically in terms of what the Foundry can do. It does nothing. The most interesting thing that it does is it spawns a blue cloud that you can in a spot that you can barely see at a certain point in time. That's the most interesting thing that it does. I don't even think anyone has noticed that the cloud spawns where it does. So I'm not very proud of it. I think what I'm proud of about it is the story. It's my strength. It's what I do for a living outside of playing video games and figuring out, in a rudimentary sense, how to use the editor that we have. That's what I do for a living, is tell stories. I have no problem with that aspect of what I have published. The story is just fine. I just wish that I knew when I published it everything that I know now, which is very rudimentary, in my opinion. The stuff that I'm working on now is leaps and bounds better than what I had in the Spotlight, and so yeah, I'm still learning, and I'm not thinking that it's something that I'm super proud of. I like the story. That's all I can say about it.
Well, Paul, what do you think about yours?
Well, I'm working on my 15th now.
Yes, we got some variety here, because I have 12. So,
but I'll say it, and I'll agree with Hippie a little bit that my strength is writing. Not saying that I'm a storyteller exactly per se, but I've been writing for 30 years, and I enjoy it. I love words, so I like to write. Yeah. And I think the best written story I've done is Chronotons and Klingons, my very first mission. And it's not very technically proficient, not near the, the level of the stuff I've released in the last year or so, because I just didn't know anything about it. I was just learning Foundry at the time. But the story, to me, it couldn't have been done any differently. It just worked out so well. I don't know why. It might have been, lucky. But to me, it's the best thing I've done, and I wish that had been my Spotlight rather than the other, but that's okay. I submitted it, but, I think having 2 Spotlights is going to be one of these things that's few and very far between. So
yeah, there's enough complaining about that already.
I don't hold out any hopes, but it's a good.
There's been one thread complaining about that.
Yeah, well,
it was the one that took off, but it was just one thread complaining about that. I can tell you that because I have 12 missions, even though 5 of them are not up right now because they're being worked on. But of that, I think the one I'm most proud of is called Over There. It's my Mirror Universe mission, and I think the thing I'm most proud of is that I was able to put in some actual sort of moral, ethical choices and pose them to the player, which is not something you see a lot, particularly, but it's something that is very Trek. It's very, it's something that Star Trek has always dealt with is, right and wrong and the various shades thereof. And I was able to put that in and put in multiple endings. Obviously it's the Foundry, so a lot of the times everything has to end up in the same place, but how you get there is different. So it was really an experience for me playing around with that. It was the very first mission I had made after I finished that 5-part series. It was something that I had written during the Season 4 downtime. We all remember The dark days.
I don't remember that. How long did that last after they patched
5 weeks.
Yeah, I even have
5 weeks. Which is insane.
It was like August into September, I believe.
But it did give me the opportunity to sit down and write a script.
I was going to say I would have written a lot.
Yeah, because that was the only thing you could do. Aside from, I think for some of it, the Tribble Foundry was up.
Mm-hmm.
But, obviously, that's Tribble. You want to be working on holodeck for the most part.
Yeah.
But, and it allowed me to really take my time and get the script I wanted, get the characters the way I wanted. It was a lot of fun, especially because it's a mirror universe episode. So I was able to make mirror versions of all my characters from that first 5-part series I made.
Cool.
It's something that, you don't have to know that they are mirror versions from that. If you haven't played that, it's no bearing on the story, but it's just fun.
Right.
If you have. And I don't know. I think it's definitely the one I'm most proud of. It's, again, not my spotlight, the one that was spotlighted. Because I think Brandon Flakes, he likes to take from both KDF and Fed side, so I think he was looking for a KDF and liked mine.
Yeah.
So, and that's cool, because I like that mission as well. But it's not the one I'm most proud of.
I would say the one I'm most proud of is the one that I'm working on when I'm not working on anything else, when I'm just kind of like, what am I going to do? And that's the one that took second place in Kirkbat's original series, time travel, sequel, whatever kind of mission. I really like that one. I really like expanding the story, and I feel like it was the most true to Trek of the stuff that I've done, because Spectres is just a contest winner. People write differently for contests, so
can't win if you can't get it done.
Yeah,
very true.
And the thing about the thing I published for Kirkbat's contest was even more rudimentary. It was like, I did it literally in a day. I was like, here's what the Foundry is like. Okay, I need to make a map. I need to put things on it. I just need to put this story down, because I just didn't have time before the deadline. I saw the contest like 2 days before the deadline of the contest and went, all right, well, here's some really, really basic maps. I did nothing to them. I just put maps down that existed in the Foundry, and put a couple things on them to shoot when I wanted them to have them, when I wanted to have something to shoot. But the story felt very true to Trek to me, and that's the thing I'm most proud of.
Perfectly great mission, just using stock maps,
Yeah.
I did literally nothing to them. I mean, there wasn't even a trigger anywhere in the mission. I didn't even understand what those were. I'm lucky that I figured out that you could close off a ready room door with a door that didn't open, so nobody walked out onto the wrong bridge. I'm lucky I figured that out by the time I was done with that. So
those are the little things though that I do look for in people's first mission. If I know it's their first mission, I look for have they discovered some things like that.
Yeah.
And that tells you that this person is probably going to be a pretty good author, going forward.
These are the only two things I discovered in that mission were how to reskin actors in a mob, and how to put walls up in front of doors. And I was like, okay, great, I have a mission. There we go.
Hey, sometimes it's just as simple as that.
All
right. Well, Green Dragoon, you got something for us?
Actually, this is kind of inspired by a thread that's been going on in the forums, and that is the subject of custom interiors. What are our experience, and what tips can we offer?
I'm glad you brought that up, because I have a good story for that, if you'll permit me a moment.
Yeah.
Not to brag too much, but I just won an award for a news photo that I took of firefighters putting out a fire in a dumpster. And it's a perfect example, because one of the things my boss tells me when I'm taking pictures is that the picture does not need to be perfect. It just needs to tell the story. And this picture is a good example because it has a huge black spot down in one corner, which was the rearview mirror of the car I was standing next to. And I couldn't crop it out. But, it had that imperfection anyway, and it still won an award. So bringing this back to the Foundry is your Foundry map, your custom build, does not have to be perfect. It just has to do what you need it to do. It has to either help you tell the story or help you with having good gameplay, but it does not have to be perfect. And that's my advice.
Congratulations on the award, anyway.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Very much, certainly.
First place. I'm not someone who wins a lot of awards, so it's a huge thing for me.
Cool. That's some really good advice too. Is that it doesn't have to be perfect. I've been staring at the same outside of a building at the end of a street in Bajor for, I don't know, a couple of weeks since I started building it, and it wasn't until sometime in the last week that I happened to be online at the Starbase UGC chat at the same time as Cass Modine, and he said, if they're running away from it, it doesn't matter, something like that. And it might not have even been in the last week. It was maybe within the last couple weeks. But it was something along the lines of, if they're not going to be facing that building when they're on this part of the map, don't worry. And I realized
you gotta keep in mind where the player's going to be looking.
Right.
Yeah, and I realized that I had been spending an inordinate amount of time trying to dress up something, and a time and limited asset. We only have so many assets we can put on a map. And I had been using some of this to try and dress up something that didn't need to be dressed up half as much as I thought that it needed to be. So I think that's really good advice, that your map doesn't need to be perfect, because it's never going to be with the assets that we have.
No.
I mean, we're talking about using the back of a generic console to be an original series wall because it's all we have.
Yeah.
You know?
Perfection is not something you can... I mean, it's something you can strive for but not achieve. But my other advice, and kind of going along with that, is your map doesn't actually have to be huge either. I mean, make it the size you need and no more.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you are one of those people who wants to have all kinds of optional things you can go explore, which is fine. There's definitely a time and place for that. But, think of it like a movie set. Is build only what you're going to need for it to look look good and look the way you want it to do and do what you want it to do. Sometimes you see movie sets that, it seems like this huge expansive set, and then you go watch the behind-the-scenes stuff, and it's, one wall.
Right.
And nothing
Flat
else.
panel.
But that's all they needed.
Well, I could say, too, like we were talking about my last mission, that presidential ballroom that I built. Now, I just needed something to look fancy. I mean, I needed something that would reflect what a president's ballroom would look like, especially in the Federation at this time. Yeah. And there's just no assets to dress anything up like that. So all I did was start looking around at the stuff that's in there that I never ever use. And I found, like, a pillar, and I said, okay, and I put 4 of them together and hung lamps off them. And then I made this huge fireplace. Now, if you look in the details, you find this booth. Now, it's like a lemonade stand or something. I don't know what you'd ever use it for. But I looked at it. It shows up
on ESD.
Yeah, I looked at it and I said, you know what? That looks like one huge fireplace because it's got the hearth, it's got the little shelf over the... So that's what I did. I made a big fireplace. And it actually came out pretty good. And people have been mentioning it in the reviews. But it just sometimes it's just what inspires you. You just happen to go buy something and say, well, that could be something else.
I think that's great advice, is to sort of look through that list of details and look at items that you've never really considered before. You might have a use for them.
Mm-hmm. That's another thing, is that items do not always get used for their intended purpose.
No.
In fact, most of the great maps...
that one we were talking about earlier with the TOS wall.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The other side of that is the sort of, the thing that's behind the bar in a lot of the maps.
Yes, I use that for a Jeffrey
refrigerator.
So, one thing that occurs to me in using a lot of different objects as, walls or floors or things like that is, I'm just starting to understand how the legacy behavior of jobs works. And I know that there are a lot of objects or a lot of details that you put on, that you put onto the map that are interactable. And I've been told there's like a red dot or a red outline that I've never been able to see on.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. But we know that there are things like consoles that if you assign, hey, this NPC is allowed to walk around and do jobs, are they going to try to like walk around the wall to get to the other side of the console and do a job at it if you're using it as a wall? You know what I mean?
I have never played with that, honestly.
No, I don't
are
think
those things to think about?
I don't think I've ever seen that actually work the way it's intended. I don't even think it does,
Okay.
to be honest.
I've used it on a couple of occasions where there's a few consoles around, like on a.
Well, I mean, I
room
put
or
it on
something.
I put it on a test map trying
does
to.
it work?
Jobs, absolutely. Like I don't remember the exact assets. I just put like a bunch of consoles down on a map, and I assigned jobs and an animation to an NPC group, and they walked around to the consoles and did stuff, or they stopped and did their animation. And I'm starting to learn how to do it, but I don't know which consoles it is, and there's no way to tell anymore because they don't let us.
Well, I know it's one of the circular ones. I'm sure of that.
Yeah, I mean,
I had one NPC that I initially set up to do jobs around one of those circular consoles, and I'd had him as a contact, and it ended up proving a bad idea because he would suddenly run off and go start typing on a console while you were trying to talk to him, and if you walked out of range, your window would shut down.
Yeah, I would say make sure that you don't ever use that in an NPC that you're gonna want to talk to.
right.
Yeah.
I've had that in professional games where an NPC is set to wander around that you got to talk to, but he's always moving out of your line of sight and closing the thing.
I want to say I've seen Cryptic do it too.
Yeah, they did it with McCoy.
Yeah, McCoy was.
And old Drozana.
Yeah, pain
that's
in
right.
me.
And I remember like World of Warcraft, so yeah, it does happen.
Yep.
It's an annoyance. Don't do it.
One other thing I wanted to mention that I do when oftentimes I'll have to or want to build like a vertical set. And I have found that, and this especially also goes for hallways and whatnot, there's an order you should kind of follow when you're laying down assets. I usually start with ceiling and floor first, so I can get those on the bottom layer, and then after that I will start building up vertically.
Huh.
Although I usually do the ceiling last.
I have this...
but I see the way you do it, and I should probably do it that way, because then
So
I
here's
have to move it
what
away
I
to
do
edit
with the
anything.
ceiling. That's what I do is I move it away.
Yeah, and I've done that a lot too, and I got really annoying because I'd have to move it back.
The thing is, I like to see when I'm altering a room or when because I'm lazy. I use all cryptic maps. I admit it. Maybe it's lazy. Maybe it's like I said before. I don't have a strong grasp of everything the Foundry can do yet, and I'm still learning. But
it took me a while to get off that.
But regardless, when I'm putting a ceiling that isn't the intended ceiling that's on the map somewhere, I like to put that. I like to bring that platform piece in and find out what height I want it sitting at to be the ceiling, and then once I get that set, I just pull it off to the black space or pull it off to one of the spaces that I'm not using for the map, so that I can do all the editing. Then once all the editing in that area is done, I can pull that ceiling back in, and it's already at the height that I need it to be. That's the way I do the ceilings.
Actually, I do that too occasionally. I just record the coordinates and then just type it in and bang, it's back.
Yeah, something like that.
The other thing too is it's good to have like a sheet of scratch paper or something.
Mm-hmm.
So if you need to write down coordinates, if you need to do math, when I built my Romulan Senate, because it was a round room, I had to do all kinds of math.
Yep.
It was crazy.
Well, I don't know if any of you guys played that King for a Day mission. It was the one before this last one. It was the one with the doors. I wanted the player to rise up a meter without knowing it. Well, I had it had to be 50 doors. And I had to break it down into 1 meter and just put in each increment. So the player goes up, rises 1 meter, and doesn't realize it. That was the whole idea of it, and it ended up being this, Get Smart type of door.
It was
all.
It was very fun. Such a fun hallway to run
certainly
through.
Something I had never seen before.
Yeah, it was very new.
Yeah, it's old now.
It's old news.
Bring on the new.
That's it.
Yep. That's something that, it's kind of funny is we always got to be striving to try and do new things because everybody's seen everything before. Well, not everything, but
See,
I don't know. I was trying to do something new.
So I sit back and I think that my favorite movies, my favorite episodes of television shows, et cetera, aren't the ones that did something flashy and spectacular and new. In fact, very often I simply appreciate those for the, hey, they did something cool, flashy, and new. But my favorite things are always the character-driven pieces and the story-driven pieces, and so I don't know that we have to always be trying to, find a new way to do things, or it's always cool when someone does. And I love that the Foundry as a whole, the community that I see around the Foundry, both in the forums, on the Starbase UGC chat and everything, is that people want to share these things that they come up with and let other people use them. But I don't think we have to constantly come up with new things. I mean, telling a good story using the old things is a powerful, powerful thing. It doesn't have to
have that foundation.
Sure.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think I try to come up with new things just for the sake of being new, but more because I see a problem and it bugs me to death until I find a way around it.
Because you have to solve it. Well,
yeah.
Guys, I've got about 2 minutes. I've got about 2 minutes here.
Did
Mark
you have something you wanted to bring up?
Not really. I think we've talked about. I wanted to look at what people wanted to hear us talk about, and it was the thing that really occurred to me is talking about what we're the most proud of, or not proud of, and why. And for me, it's not so much a mission that I'm most proud of. It's the fact that story worked. It made me feel really good about the community, or about not just the community, but it made me feel really good about the players of the game, at least the ones who played and voted on the challenge missions, because there were a lot of missions when I did the challenge that I did, not the most recent one, and I don't know people who had the most recent one. Maybe you can comment on this after I take off, Drogan, or maybe ask for other people who were in the challenge to comment on this. That my experience there was, I felt like I had a strong story, but that, like I said, the most intricate thing I did was make a blue cloud appear someplace people couldn't see it. There's nothing special or interesting about what is technically done in that mission. It's all story. And it made me feel really good about the player base, that something that I think was only based on story won the Foundry challenge, which it makes me feel good about the community that story is that important. It really does. To me, that's what I want the Foundry to be about, is about sharing great stories. And for me, maybe I rate people pretty highly sometimes on missions that I see other people rating low numbers on. And for me, it might just be because I'm happy to see other story out there, and I'm pretty forgiving about people who miss a technological limitation or something like that. I don't know. Or spelling errors don't mean that much to me.
Well, if you think about it, The Next Generation was a great show, despite the fact that 40% of it takes place around a conference table.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, episodes like The Inner Light. I mean, there wasn't anything really technical about that episode. No wow there, but it was a great, great story.
Other than a pretty good little village set.
Yeah,
right.
a good little set of a village is what they had there. But I mean, it was certainly no best of both worlds.
No.
It was certainly no.
To me, it was better.
Yeah, it was, and I think Inner Light.
And there's
was
sort of a
better
time
episode.
and place for the two different approaches. The big, flashy, high drama approach, and then the smaller character-driven stories. There's definitely a place for all of it.
And there is in the Foundry as well. You know?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I always kind of think back to the original series episode, The Corbomite Maneuver, which the entire episode pretty much takes place on the bridge, just them sitting around on the bridge talking.
Yeah.
And yet it's a good episode.
Mm-hmm.
Very good.
I can't disagree with that.
My favorite episode of all time is The Wounded, which, there's a couple of space battles. The space battles are not particularly well done as space battles go.
Right.
You know, but my absolute favorite scene in it is just the two guys talking, you know, at the very end.
Yeah, I guess, you know, at the same time, I kind of wish that I hadn't won Foundry Challenge number 5 with just story. And there's a topic I'd love to hear other people's opinions on since I'm on my way out the door, is the Foundry Challenge is supposed to be about what is the best thing that can be produced, you know, like does the Foundry Challenge, in the spirit of the thing, look for a good story, because Brandon has been very clear that the Foundry Challenge is about story missions, and spotlights are about story missions and things like that. Is it about a good story also combined with the ability to really use the assets that are there in the Foundry and make, you know, great maps and interesting things and, you know, interesting technological things being done with the Foundry? Is that part of what should go into people's decisions about voting on contest entries? I don't know. All I do know is that I got to go read Shakespeare. So, not being a priest tonight. So, guys, have a great night. We'll talk to everybody soon.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Well, we won't quite stop there, because I've got something to say on what he was talking about, is that I think to be a really good mission, you kind of have to have that package. If you're going to do something that's technologically good, it has to work, and it has to work well and mesh well with your story and not be just kind of gratuitous. And I think, you know, I think probably the biggest failing of my challenge entry is that one of the technological things I wanted to do did not work properly. And so, you know, you can have the greatest story in the world, but if you have a technological failing, it's not going to be good. And if you can have the greatest technological thing in the world, but if you have a story failing, it's not going to be great.
Right. I guess you have to approach it the same way they do in the shows, where the technology is there to help the storytelling, and that's it.
Absolutely.
You know?
And, you know, I'm sure that everybody who looks at these challenge missions kind of votes probably differently, you know, because everybody looks for different things. I'd be interested to know, I don't think it was on there, but I'd be interested to know how many votes were cast. How many people actually make it through all of the missions, because there were a lot this time.
Yeah, that's tough. That really is. I don't know if I could find the time. Personally.
I know I did not. So
yeah, I've never entered one, actually.
This was my first, and I really enjoyed it, because I enjoyed the mission that I made, despite its couple of failings, and I was very gratified to see that it got quite a number of plays, 60 some odd plays.
Well, that's good.
So, you know, it is a way to get your mission played. Yeah, that's for sure.
I'm waiting for one of the themes to strike me. You know, something that I'm really, really interested in doing, because I really have to make time. You know, prime time is a killer time-wise. It takes a lot of time.
I'm amazed that you get any missions done.
Well, I try to. I don't want to lose it.
I was going to say, and your last one was no slouch. What was it, 13 maps?
Well, it was the full 10, and
you can do 15 now.
More. I was going to say, it was more than 10.
No, it couldn't be. There's a 10 map limit.
Not anymore.
Yeah, they upped it a while back.
When?
I think not last season.
Like season 6, I think.
Really? I thought I tried to make an 11th map and couldn't.
I'm pretty sure it's 15 now.
I think you might have more.
I'm gonna go try it right now.
This is not a license to make your mission longer.
No. I'm just curious, because I never.
We always hold up, you know, Old Lord Skull as the king of the long missions. I can tell you a funny story. Back when Bazag was developing Broadcast UGC, he and I ran Old Lord Skull's mission, not really realizing how long it was, and read out all of the dialogue and filmed ourselves. I wonder if he still has that somewhere.
Oh, I bet Galactrix
Because
probably.
it was epic. It took us
Now I have a
4 or
desire
5
to see the
hours.
return of Broadcast UGC.
Oh, they're coming back with
I hope so.
Duke of Rock
Duke of Rock, awesome.
and Baz are going to do it.
Get that Florida drawl. That'll be
That's going to be
fun.
an interesting combination.
The Aussie and the Florida drawl.
Oh, I love to hear Baz talk. It makes me laugh, especially when he imitates Ferengi.
Something I love about
Baz
this
has
community
one of
is just
those,
the diversity.
Baz has one of those, it's not sort of the traditional Aussie accent. It's quite interesting.
I feel like he should be narrating something.
Traditional. Good eye, mate.
Yeah. The Paul Hogan, Crocodile Dundee
Crocodile Dundee.
stereotype.
Well, Paul, do you see any pressing Foundry issues that you would like to talk about?
The only pressing Foundry issue I'm worried about is what happens once Neverwinter goes live. I wonder if they're really going to bring that stuff over. I would really love to see some new functions in our Foundry. A lot of new assets and some of the things that, the new technologies they've worked out for the new one. I mean, not that I can go into it, but,
Sure. I think we're going to see some of it eventually. It's not going to be quick, that's for sure, because they're going to have to...
No.
The team that made it on the Neverwinter side is going to have to stay over there for a while.
Oh, yeah. They said as much to us.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But I really hope that we're going to see some of those improvements.
Yeah, it's a funny thing. I've been going through some of the MMO site reviews for Neverwinter, and a lot of them have made, weighing various pros and cons of choices of interface and quality of story and all that. A lot of them have made the observation that they think the Foundry of Neverwinter will be a huge make-or-break feature of the game. And I'm starting to get the impression that the Foundry in Neverwinter may be a much more crucial part to that game.
Oh, it is.
So.
Sure it is. It was built around the Foundry.
Built it up to be, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah.
And as I understand it, with previous Neverwinter games, which of course were not Cryptic games, but with previous Neverwinter games, modding was a huge thing. Making those custom modules, I believe they called them. And, I'm glad to see them taking that and sanctioning that and making a tool for that.
So yeah, I mean, well, it makes hurt a little that the Foundry team isn't working on Stowe. I suspect it would be a bigger detriment for Cryptic overall if they weren't working on Neverwinter.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So,
yeah.
Well, yeah. That's it.
I don't know. It's really hard to predict. I think if we will see them and when. When is the big part.
Yeah, they'll probably take a while. And I'm not saying I want them to instantly transform the thing overnight. I mean, I'd love to just have a invisible targetable object. I think I could do that.
You
know what I'm saying? Like something that you can fire at a door like we do in some of the Cryptic missions.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'd like to see some of the things that we can do in Cryptic missions.
It just seems like we get it trickles in a little every now and then. We just got all that TOS stuff, and
I think it's one of those.
And we've actually already had some features from Neverwinter migrate over, some things that they've worked on, like I believe patrols and disappearing NPCs. We were told that those are things that they developed in the Neverwinter Foundry.
Yeah, I mean we were told
here in the code merges.
We were told originally that disappearing NPCs would be impossible.
Impossible. It was one of the two things that I always joke that they said were impossible that they've done. The other one was allowing us to log out to the character select screen instead of logging completely out. They told us that was impossible.
I think I've commented on this before, but I think that was impossible until they got the core team to do something about it.
So it's not really impossible, is it?
Well, then that's pretty hopeful,
Yeah, it means that other impossible things might work. Happen.
Actually, I mean, the fact that we've been kind of seeing these, you can see them kind of slipping in these code merges from Neverwinter, and I suspect that that's actually a very hopeful sign, because it means that they're trying to at least keep our Foundry somewhat in step with Neverwinter's Foundry, presumably for the intention that they want to perform some kind of big feature swap in the future.
Well, I'm sure that it all has to do with what's compatible with the, with what we have already.
True.
I mean,
And it's also, Stove's Foundry is a different animal because, of course, it's a different game. It has different features.
Sure.
It has space.
Right. Things leave the ground.
Yeah,
that was
they've explained in the past, though, how code merges
how hard
are
it was to,
a different...
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I remember them telling us how hard it was to implement patrols correctly because Neverwinter doesn't have space, and we do.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, like you said, Paul, I don't think it's going to happen overnight. I do think that they are making subtle changes behind the scenes with the looking forward to an eventual feature dump from Neverwinter into Stowe. But that's only my personal guess, and really isn't much more than that.
Yeah, but as far as anything else, as long as we can keep using it, as long as Season 8 doesn't disrupt it.
Well, I'm sure it
No
will.
promises.
I just hope that it's a downtime of the couple-week variety rather than the couple-month variety.
Yeah, and they definitely try to keep the
I think they've
downtime
learned.
lower.
Yeah, they've learned from the past, and they try and keep it as much as they can to a minimum. But I'm sure that we're going to have some.
Yeah.
We're used to the drill by now.
Yep.
We know what's coming.
Yeah, I know they work hard to try to head that off before they even implement it, and you can't account for everything, I guess.
No.
So.
Well, guys, I think we're going to end here for the night. So
Okay.
Say goodnight and wish everybody happy Countdown Ending Day.
Yes, I'm excited.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, gentlemen, for having me on.
It's been a great pleasure having you.
You lucky people listening to the show who already know what it is.
Yes. We don't know what it is because we're coming to you from the past. So,
All right. Well,
good night,
everyone.
Good night.